Hey everyone, this is Drinks Presents Wine Online 101, a 10-part series for wineries to tackle an entirely new approach to expanding their business online. Today is the final episode. We've saved the best for last. And I'm joined by Jessica Kogan, founder of the Digital Voice Consultancy and former CMO and CDO of Vintage Wine Estates. And I'm also rejoined again by Zach Brandenburg, co-founder and CEO of Drinks, our parent company, being Electric, the marketing agency. So thank you so much for both of you hopping on. I'm excited to dive in here.
I am too.
So,
I love transparency. We just start with total transparency. It's fantastic. So
yes.
digital.
Transparency is the name of the game. So in that light, can you give everybody a quick background and intro to who you are before we dive into some of the topics we've got set up for today?
Sure. So I've been in the adult beverage industry for about 20 years, mostly from, I would say 100% of my experience from the digital standpoint. I co-founded a digitally native business called Cameron Hughes Wine back in 2005. And that company was acquired by Vintage Wine Estates in 2017. And at Vintage Wine Estates helped grow not only Cameron Hughes Wine as a digitally native business, but their entire portfolio of traditional estate wines and lifestyle brands. So got way more complex and way more interesting. So my previous background in PR, marketing, integrated marketing for beauty and fashion, and started my digital career at a company called Razorfish back in 1998.
Awesome. That's super helpful context. What made you want to make the leap into the wine industry?
Well, Brandon, you are young. What happened was I met a man and I moved across country, and he had a dream to start a wine company. And I was working with Razorfish, and he was telling me all about it, and I thought it was super interesting. And I can do anything in CPG, quite frankly. If it's a product, I can pretty much figure out how to sell it. And I just thought, wow, wine's really interesting. It's really difficult to articulate why somebody would like it, not only when you're standing in person, but like most especially online. So I was down with the challenge. And so Cam started the company, and he's like, do you want to join? And I'm like, let's do this. And so we started Cameron Hughes Wine. So I had no previous wine experience, zero.
That's awesome.
So I've known you for years, Jessica, but I don't think I knew that part of the story. And I think that's awesome. But I did want to also jump in and thank you for joining us, because I'm honored to be able to share this podcast with you. Super impressed with everything you've done since we met, what you did with the growth of Cameron Hughes and what you did at VWE, and really excited to hear your insights today.
Oh, thanks, Zach. I feel the mutual admiration society here, like what you've done with Drinks, where you came from, how you and Lewis have transformed it. Honestly, I learn from you guys every day. I follow you guys every day to see what you're up to. So thank you.
Now we're all together.
It's all coming full circle. So you mentioned in store. What are some of the things, like with your online sales strategy, that you're able to do or accomplish that you can't really replicate in an in-store environment?
I think what I like to think of in the digital world is that you have the power of many, and the syndication and publishing capabilities to touch even more. So again, I'm just going to use the example, and this is by no means a limitation for people who like to go into store and buy wine, as they should. I think it's a wonderful thing. Mm-hmm. For me, going into a store is an anxiety-provoking experience. There are so many labels, there are so many shelf sets, so I can't make heads or tails. I haven't been able to do it since I started in this industry, and I still can't do it now. And what I found particularly compelling about digital is that it tells the story so well about a brand, and in particular related to wine. And so I have always felt, even though I may not have known the industry, that the web was a really great place for brands to communicate, whether, it's like whether it's about a car or a watch, but especially wine, because wine is complex. It is. And I feel like in our industry, there isn't a lot of space to tell that story sometimes. And the web gives you as much time as you want.
I feel like it definitely gives you the tools, but I'd say of all the industries that I've worked within, I think wine is probably the one where I see the most opportunity for wineries to tap into the power of digital and storytell, because like unlike all of your properties which have the storytelling, there's plenty of that I see that are more so just transactional. Even though I know who they are and they have a really cool story, they just are not showcasing it, even though they do have that capability.
I totally agree with you. I said this to a couple of folks who are they own their own wineries, they have their own physical presence and tasting rooms, and I have said this like a few times. You spend so much time thinking about what the experience is like for a customer or a guest when you receive them in your tasting room. What is it that they're going to feel? How are they going to interact with the associates? How are they going to enjoy the wines? That same type of thinking is fully available to you online. You can apply the exact same principles and talk to like hundreds more people at the exact same time.
It's interesting you talk about that, because I've seen as well the intense amount of attention paid to the concept of hospitality, right? At the winery, at the tasting room, and the ability to, I guess, convey that message on your website with additional content and building relevancy for a consumer to feel as much as you can impart to them through a digital means. A question I would pose, because you have a lot more experience than I do in this, how do successful wineries take what they're able to do online and eventually bring it full circle, both either back into the tasting room or into traditional brick and mortar retail, which still remains the dominant point of sale?
Sure. I mean, in my experience, the tasting rooms are really the top of the funnel, right? They really begin the customer journey, and they begin the customer journey in a couple of different ways that I don't think a lot of tasting rooms think about it. That journey actually starts digitally for a customer. When they are looking to go visit a winery, 9 out of 10 customers or guests are doing a search online to figure out which tasting room they're going to go to. And so part of the moment that a estate like literally lays down the last brick and opens the door, they should be in parallel thinking this. How do I get customers who are searching online to visit Napa, Sonoma, wherever? How do I get them to my tasting room? What is that going to take? Because it's the only time that a customer that we have found is open to exploring, because it's kind of like, I think of it a little bit as like the captive customer. When you decide you're going to go to Napa and you decide you're going to go to Sonoma, you're there for a couple of days and you're stuck, and you want to see as much as you possibly can. So how are you going to learn about wineries and tasting rooms? Sure, you'll ask some friends, but let's be honest, you're going to go online and do a search like we all do. And so the beginning of the digital relationship of a tasting room or just an Alcbev brand is really how you bring the customer to your home, right, to your place that you sell, whether it's your tasting room, whether it's your in wholesale, whether it's your e-com business. But in this particular case, we're talking about the traditional winery model. Like, why would a state spend time thinking about building their business online? Well, because the only way in the next, I would say, like, after, if you are not working on building out your plan online, how to acquire guests to your tasting room, like that's you're gonna lose, because that is literally the only way. The second part to that is, if you are going to follow that approach, you need to think about your reservation system, and your reservation system should be a piece of software that has complete integration into all of the main search browsers, right? So Chrome or Bing or Explorer. You know, there are some like really nice reservation systems out there that, you know, are very fancy, but they don't add any digital value to the acquisition of a customer. And so it's like, you have to think very broadly. Okay, how am I going to bring customers to my tasting room? Okay, check, got a great reservation system, great, got SEO, got SEM, rock and roll. Bring the customer to the tasting room, they come visit, they're at another tasting room, you deliver an ad to them in the tasting room while they go check out CNN on their phone. And the ad is, come visit, you know, my winery, it's 3 miles away. Like, this is how tasting rooms must be thinking. The customer comes to the tasting room, they have an amazing experience, because the one thing that all tasting rooms are awesome at is hospitality. They then are convinced to join a wine club, because why not? And also, I want to remember this incredible experience. Like, who doesn't want to have some type of memento of an amazing experience? That's why a lot of customers join wine club. Your wine club is powered by an e-com system. I don't know of a wine club that isn't powered by an e-com system. They join wine club, they transact in the tasting room by buying some wines while they were there, or paid for the flight that they enjoyed. That's being transacted by an e-com system. So you're building like a picture of your customer. So like, they come to you online, they come to your physical place of you know, your estate, or where you're selling your wine. They buy some wine, they join the wine club, and then the customer goes home and they like have a, you know, they're just kind of like hanging out with friends, and like, I just had this awesome trip, just visited this like great winery. And the friend is like, oh my God, tell me all about it. And the friend goes, well, check it out online. Look at it, all the information. You can read all about the founder, you can read all about their story, you can read about all the different wines they have, and you can see where you can buy it locally. I mean, to me, like, it's almost as if there are states out there that think that they should not be participating in e-commerce, then their business will be limited by both guest visitation and their ability to really develop a meaningful relationship with their customers.
I think it's the most unique thing about the wine industry is the tasting room, because it's that hub for customer acquisition that can then funnel into a 5-year, 10-year relationship with the customer. If
Totally.
you're integrated, like if your POS
I'm
is integrated
100% with you. I mean, maybe I am giving it away, saying like,
Mhm.
every winery who's listening, like, you must be implementing like a strategic digital marketing plan to get guests to your tasting rooms. But honestly, that's the moment that customers are open to trying anything.
Now, hugely critically important. How has, from your perspective, that changed from pre-COVID to COVID, or pre-COVID to post-COVID? Because
Yeah.
obviously tasting room business went to the ground and now has recovered. And I don't know, I mean, is it currently outshining what it used to be pre-pandemic, in the same way that some hospitality, some restaurants are having the greatest summers ever?
Yeah. I mean, they're having the greatest summers compared to like the previous summer for sure. I mean, you are definitely seeing, 2019 all over again, like what it was supposed to be. Like had it, well, it was 2020 when the pandemic came, but 2019 was a banner year for a lot of wineries. But I will say this, there were a lot of tasting rooms that closed during COVID. They had no choice. But few tasting rooms had the technology implemented within their tasting rooms to outbound to customers in a meaningful way. And those that did made huge gains, like just huge gains. And so the result of that is that a lot of tasting rooms that were maintaining relationships with customers who had visited it previously had extended or grown their wine clubs during COVID. Those customers are visiting in droves. And so those tasting rooms, there's a list of tasting rooms that are just way outperforming anything, specifically because they were able to use their e-com systems to connect with customers when they couldn't physically visit. So for example, I know I'm going to throw you guys way back, virtual tastings, right? Like remember during COVID, how big they were? If you were a winery that was hosting virtual tastings in your tasting room to your customers who'd come to visit, like huge, those customers were so appreciative. And those are the customers that kept you in business, or buying into Wine Club, buying directly from you through COVID. And now they're visiting you and they're bringing like 50 other friends. Also during COVID in those virtual tastings, the wineries who figured it out, they said to their to their customers, hey, why don't you invite a bunch of people on your block and we'll do a virtual tasting for everybody. And so many of the opportunities that came from COVID that we generally only think happen in the tasting room actually happen virtually, that relationship of the associate to the customer. And now we're just seeing it like kind of just growing like tenfold.
Yeah, I think when it comes to some of the like unique, I'd say, differentiators that wineries have, that's still the number one for me that stands out the most, is the fact that they have that in-person hub that so many stores don't. And especially as we see a lot of e-commerce brands struggling right now that are solely reliant upon digital, it's a no-brainer. Like we've been trying to get as many of our brands as possible to do like pop-up shops and like in-store activations and things like that, because people are craving in-person experiences. And then you get user-generated content, you get you actually get to start to build a little bit of a community in a way that can't be replicated online either. But
I totally agree though. I would say like, I don't know how it's been for you guys, but like the e-com business is not like down. The e-com business it's maintaining its massive growth that it experienced over the last 2 years. So it's flat, but it's not down. So I don't know.
It's not down, but there is, it depends on what industry you're in, right? For us, I think on the alcohol side, there's so much room to run in general, not just because of e-commerce lift and I would say consumer awareness that you can buy wine online. I mean, it's still so many people that need to be educated that alcohol can be purchased on the internet. Alcohol can be purchased in their state, and there's a way to find it. And so our category penetration is still so low, which gives us this incredible and enormous opportunity that the merchants, the wineries need to take advantage of. I think across multiple categories or multiple product verticals outside of alcohol, there have been some expectations that, this wave is just going to continue to last forever. And I think that's causing more of a perhaps macroeconomic sidebar topic here, but it's causing this weird impression I think I see in the markets where there's an unrealistic expectation of continued accelerated growth across every industry. And yet, if you look at it, you're still getting very solid growth you're just not seeing this boom that took place for some of the retailers and some of the others
Mhm.
between, mid 2020 all the way through 2021. But
Yeah.
so many beverage alcohol puns we weave into conversation about untapped demand and unquenchable thirst for a product. And I mean, you really have that here. That's always been, at least for me, one of the things that was most exciting about this industry when we started drinks in 2013, 2014, that the market penetration was so small. And that meant that you could really be innovative and change the way consumers engage with the product.
I completely agree. And it continues. I mean, it truly does. I mean, I would say what is happening at the retail level, like the retail.com level, like the Safeway.com, Albertsons, Walmart's, you know this better than I do, Zach, but it's just, I mean, the percentage of alcohol sales through retail e-commerce is huge relative to where it was. I mean, it was like less than 1% in 2017. And in 2021, I was just looking at the number, it's like of total wine specific here to wine sales, it's already 4% of total wine sold through e-commerce. And to me, that only speaks more directly and more urgently to brand owners they must have websites. They must. Consumers, when they are buying online on Safeway.com or, HEB.com, they want validation. They want to know that the brand they're about to buy has a story, is available to be purchased online, not just in their favorite local retail store, but somewhere else. It's part of how consumers approach feeling confident about their alcohol purchase specific to wine. So I would say, it is an absolute necessity to have an e-commerce presence for your brand that you control as a supplier. It's absolutely critical, because the other part is your retailers, if you're selling to wholesale, they want that data. They want that information to talk about your brand on their site. And it's different now. It's not like a product setup. It's an automation. I mean, it really has become content management. You're just sending that information over to your distributor digitally, and then your distributors digitally publishing that information to the retailer's website. Don't you want to control that conversation? The conversation between you and the customer, like what they hear about you and your brand. I mean, it's an unprecedented opportunity for suppliers. They've never had this chance.
And I prefer, I can buy certain brands from the store, but I don't want to, because when I buy it from their website, there's usually some sort of maybe there's an offer, but even more so than that, I get all the content and the education that I'm not going to get if I go to the Publix or whatever down the street and pick it up. So
and
that's a big selling point for me as well.
It's really interesting. And I've asked friends about this, because I have a lot of friends who aren't in the wine industry, and, they don't like going, my friends in particular, they would prefer to be able to spend time with the information versus feeling compelled, like when they walk in a store. Because to them, it's an expensive purchase. It's a discretionary item. It falls in discretionary, which means extra. And so I am a girl, and I'm going to talk about it from a beauty standpoint. Like when I buy beauty products, it's expensive, and I want to know everything I can about the product. It's the same thing with wine. It really is. The same absolutely applies. And so if in other industries, they're taking that conversation so seriously, we in the wine industry must take that conversation very seriously.
That's why I prefer restaurants that publish their wine list online, because then I don't have to like get there in person and start like sweating from the stress of the sommelier standing over me and like, is
Why
this
do you feel
bottle
stressed out
4X what it
about a
should be?
sommelier? What is it that they do that stresses you out?
They're just there. And I'm like, I'd prefer to come educated, especially if the list is really large and I have no
Mhm.
idea what I'm doing. And then I mean, I always want to look up the wine to make sure that it's not an egregious price, like when you're in a
Yeah.
restaurant.
Mhm.
And so it feels weird when they're standing there and I'm on Wine Searcher looking at
Is
the
it the
wine that they just recommended to me.
But is it the expectation of you, or is it the fact that you think they're there to judge you? Because I mean,
Oh, they're
you could
judging.
theoretically
There's no doubt.
translate that to a in-store retail shopping experience where there might be somebody there helping you who's evaluating what your purchase is.
So I experienced this recently after just moving to Florida. There's like a lot of Total Wines here, which there are not in San Diego. So I
Mhm.
went into one and this guy was trying to be like very helpful and friendly, but I just didn't want to talk to him. Like I didn't trust him like I trust the internet. So he could recommend to me this bottle that's on the shelf. And I'm like, what does he know? Like I could just go on the internet and look at 1,000 reviews on Wine Searcher from critics and this and that. And that's how I'm going to figure out what I want to purchase. But
Mhm.
then it feels kind of weird when I'm in the store for an hour and a half because I'm literally looking up every single wine that is on the shelf. So
I think
there's
they're okay
pros
with
and
it.
cons.
That's a really interesting like customer journey that I think one that not a lot of um independent wine stores, groceries think about
Mhm.
enough.
How does
And to the supplier, back to the supplier, like back to the supplier, like in order to influence your choice, if that is what your journey is going to be, they absolutely have to have a presence.
it's just ingrained in me for any product category. Like if I'm in a store, I'm automatically looking it up online because all these stores price match now.
Are you
Especially
Gen Z? What are you? Are you millennial? What are you?
I'm Gen Z. I just
Yeah,
missed the cutoff
yeah,
for millennial.
yeah. No, like this is the way it's gonna be. I mean, like part of the other issue is that in our industry, you have that intergenerational piece where things don't move fast enough from generation to generation, and you think your customer is one way, but it's not. Like the customer landscape has completely changed because of the internet.
How does your internet presence and like the data you're able to glean from your storefront feed
Mhm.
into like distributors and your distribution strategy?
I mean, it's a really good question. And really what it is, the only information that I think is actionable for them is what we see as the best performers and why, right? So when I'm working with the national wholesale team, I am providing insights to them based on brands and varietals that within our SKU universe are selling like really well nationally to all the major states with city information, where we're seeing just kind of like where all the heavy distribution, physical distribution will happen, but also speaks to like that the digital customer. And so I'll give them that information, and it's typically not far out of line with what is happening, because here's the truth. Great physical distribution, if you have good digital distribution, the two work together. The two feed off of one another. So I can tell when our national wholesale team gets some really good placements. Like it actually bumps the brand and makes different and will make a difference for a brand that's large enough. And so we then will take it to the next level and test it on, like, Instacart and a couple of different marketplaces, just to kind of validate what we're seeing. And the data doesn't lie,
Can I go in on that? So,
Yeah.
I mean, there is, and it's expressed in different ways, but there is a sentiment we hear about concerns that one channel will cannibalize the other, or that conflict is inherent and can't be avoided. But that's not what you see.
Not at all. Like, far from it. In fact, it builds momentum. It's a momentum builder. Always, always.
I'm glad to hear that, because we've always thought about it like a flywheel. I mean, that's really what it is. It's your own. I know that Amazon loves that term, but you really have the ability to create influence if you're active with your own property, and you're creating a degree of momentum that can then be utilized by somebody else who's really going to drive full circle.
Absolutely. I mean, as long as the product's in stock at the retailer location, it just really does. It influences the flywheel, not only on the retailer's website, but also in search. It improves your ability to be higher in an organic search. I mean, there's just so many benefits of having a e-com presence that don't, like, it's like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week advertising for anything that you have physically in store. That's the way I look at it. And that's how we have been operating for the last couple of years. And we have grown brands in huge ways just with that simple, basic operating philosophy. And the wholesale teams totally get it now. They're like, we got to have one. We can't have one without the other. Like, the two must be together. In fact, buyers, I haven't heard this recently, but I have heard that buyers, when they're looking at new products, they will look for the product's presence online, and they will want to see what they're doing, and they will want to see that they have customers following them. And guess what? They'll be really impressed if you have reviews on your website, because that means customers are engaged with you.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm glad that you're reaffirming what we've been saying to ourselves internally here, without having any experience running a winery. But
it really does make a difference. And I mean, you're interesting in that you're going through Wine Searcher. I think that's a more sophisticated level of, like, you're a more sophisticated wine buyer. You just are through osmosis, but most people don't go to that. Most people don't know to search that way. What they will do is type in Cabernet, $14 in the search toolbar.
Mm-hmm. It's an interesting, there's like a SEO and local SEO component to the winery websites, because you have the local SEO with like the Napa tasting rooms, but then you have nationwide when somebody's looking up $14 Cabernet at the store and making sure that you're listing for that as well. So that's fascinating.
Well, it depends, right? It depends on your strategy with your retailer. It depends. Can you
elaborate?
I mean, it just depends. If you from a SEM standpoint, if you want to make sure that your retailers are getting to you first, like that they are getting first dibs on customers who are searching for Cabernet $14, and my product happens to fall within that product set, and I want to give that to my retailers, you can. You're just like one level down. And it's just a strategic approach. I mean, it just means by having a digital presence, a e-com presence, you can really do anything. You just don't have limitations. You can support your retailers how you want to. You can support your customers how they want to. And you're just basically at the center of the universe for your customer. and you're just giving them every single possible way to connect and engage with your product and transact where they want, how they want, when they want.
Are you taking that data and using it in any way to ideate new product lines or new labels or new brands?
You know, we have very strong, vintage has really good innovation. But I would say, I think what I would love to see for vintage and even for other alc bev companies is that they actually really crowdsource better and really bring into focus customers and their interests and what they want. And I think like the hard seltzer thing is like a really good example of kind of what's going on in that world, is that there's just so like now like a lot of wine companies are coming out with like, you know, their hard wine seltzer, like wine cocktail. And I think sure there's a place for that, but I think if you were doing more like digital crowdsourcing, it would, I don't know if that would be the product that's coming into like RTDs today.
There's some pretty cool stuff that you could start to do with like pre-selling.
Mhm.
Let's say you like make 3 labels and you can turn each one into an NFT, because why not? And then
Yes.
whichever NFT gets purchased the most of, you'll get first access to that new brand and maybe some exclusive content.
Where your head is at, Brandon, is absolutely like I think maybe because I'm too old, like it's super hard for me to like even imagine it. I want to understand it so badly. I want to understand like how cryptocurrency is going to play into all of this. And I mean, from an NFT standpoint, like I can see it so easily on the collectible side of things. It's just really hard to see it on kind of the everyday on the everyday product.
I just have one final question for you. I think it'd be helpful for all the wineries listening, for those that either do have an e-commerce presence, but they haven't really thought about how to accelerate it, or for those who are just thinking about making the leap. What's like one sort of key tip or trick you'd give to them based off of all of your experience in this space?
Um,
And it can only be one.
I'm thinking it's got to be good. I think when you say key tip or trick, is it to get online or already online, or ask me the question?
I guess we could do 2. So for a winery that's already online,
Mhm.
what's one thing that you've had a lot of success with, or that you would share with them that could potentially be helpful? And then second, for those that have no e-commerce presence whatsoever, like where do they even begin?
Sure. So for the winery that's already online, that has an e-com system, it is all about optimizing their reservations and driving guests to their funnel. That's like number one priority. So really good, strong, smart digital marketing with SEO and SEM within the location of where they are, 5 to 10 miles. And for any customers who are searching Napa, Sonoma, or wherever their locations are, and to get up there in paid and non-paid. For those,
I was just gonna say, I'd be curious to see what the difference is in like lifetime value and retention and all like the core customer metrics for those who make their first purchase in store versus those who do not. I think that'd be interesting to sort of dig into and do some cohort analysis there.
totally. When you say in store, like in a retail store versus a winery?
Or sorry, not in store. I refer to it as in store for like when I'm talking to regular brands, because they don't have tasting rooms, but tasting room, like making your first purchase in the tasting room versus making your first purchase just through the e-commerce storefront.
I can tell you, I've seen the data. It's the whole
Significant.
It's a totally different ballgame. For those suppliers who don't, or wineries that don't have a digital presence, the simplest way to do this is to get a subscription to Shopify and get online. Like instead of spending 50 hours doing product setup sheets for their retailers and their distributors. Just spend the 20 hours on Shopify and set up your store and fulfill out of your tasting room, and you're in business, babe. Like, that's it. It's that simple.
Agreed.
Those are two great suggestions, Jess. And, they tie to something you said just a moment ago. We were talking about internet presence. It's about optionality. Optionality is so critically important, being able to meet the customer wherever they are. And, you got to be involved in every area. So I think maybe my tip is for wineries that are online or offline, if you want to know what to do, you should probably call you.
Yes, of course they can call, they can definitely call me, of course. But yes, I would agree. I mean, there's so much, there's just the world, there's so much there really to be done. And so many, with so few distributors left, just seems like the smartest way these days to connect with customers. But yes, it's about allowing customers to shop where they want to shop, how they want to shop, and self-service as much as as much as possible. Brandon, you're the case study for that. Self-service all the way.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was very interesting. I've got 1,000 more questions, but unfortunately, we've got to wrap up. Just for everybody listening, in this session, at a high level, we talked through all the opportunities that you have to be able to leverage like online to push in store. We touched on tasting room, how that's such an integral component of a customer acquisition strategy for wineries. We also touched on the fact that online and retail are really a flywheel, and you need both in today's day and age to be able to truly connect to your consumers and also get better distribution presence. Now, if you have any questions about this in any way whatsoever, just email us at wineries@drinks.com and we'll set up a meeting, or we'll connect you with an expert like Jessica. So thank you both for joining us, and thank you everybody for listening.
Thanks for having me.